News.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
4:05, I'm Will Feelwright with your KBNU News update. And for Bill Walter on this Friday. The news this hour brought to you by Northern Steel Building. Well, the Utah Senate has given final approval to a nearly $200 million tax cut package, sending the measure now to Governor Spencer Cox, who plans to sign it. Senate Bill 59, which was sponsored by Senator Dan McKay, a Republican of Riverton, passed unanimously yesterday afternoon on a 28-0 vote, the day after it had passed the House of Representatives. Now, Cox said in a statement, quote, "These tax cuts are a tremendous win for Utah families and seniors, and I look forward to signing this bill into law," end of quote. Now, the measure cuts the income tax rate from 4.95 to 4.85%, saving the typical Utah family about $100 a year. It also enacts a state-earned income tax credit, which will cost about $16.1 million. Social Security taxes will also be cut to the tune of about $15.4 million. The total measure will cost approximately $192.9 million. Yesterday's vote comes several weeks into the legislative session in which legislative leaders had promised to cut taxes, while some lawmakers had pushed to remove the sales tax on food this year, but that effort eventually failed. Cox had also proposed a grocery tax credit, but that didn't happen either. Still, the governor got on board with the earned income tax credit, which he said would benefit lower-income Utahns. The governor also said expanding Social Security tax cuts would benefit Utah's most vulnerable seniors. Well, coming up, a trial date has been set for a former USU football player accused of rape. As we check your weather forecast, as we've had hazy skies today, warm temperatures, though, been in the low 40s, and it looks like we're going to stay this way through the weekend, as tonight we'll see temperatures drop into the mid-teens with hazy skies continuing into the weekend. Tomorrow, temperatures around 39 to 40 degrees, and then low 40s again coming on Sunday and into Valentine's Day Monday. Well, a 22-year-old former Utah State football player charged with raping a female student might finally get his day in court. Jamal A. Evans is scheduled for a 3-day trial to begin June 15th, 4 years after the crime allegedly occurred. Evans participated in a virtual hearing earlier this week in First District Court, appearing by web conference. He was previously charged with rape and forcible sodomy, both first-degree felonies. Evans was arrested after a female USU student reported being raped to school officials back in June of 2018. Now, the case had been delayed previously several times. One time when another jury trial for another former USU football player, Torrey Green, was scheduled at the same time, and the two trials ended up conflicting with each other. Later trials were also postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic that limited in-person hearings. During this past week's hearing, defense attorney Shannon Demler requested the trial, stating that he had been unable to reach a plea agreement with prosecutors. He also asked for a final pretrial conference where attorneys will have one more chance to work out a plea deal before trial. Evans is currently out of jail after posting a $25,000 bail. He could face up to life in prison if convicted. In for Bill Walter, I'm Will Feelwright with your Friday update.
If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur.
Why the heck is the roof leaking? Larry, you said you got it fixed.
I thought it was fixed, Donna. Everything was fine until it started raining.
Larry, that's the point of fixing the roof, is so we can actually live here when it's stormy outside.
This is David with Roof Rescue. Our experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
Hi, this is Drew Allen with Allen Mortuaries. Over the years, thousands of families have planned ahead with Allen Mortuaries. Planning ahead helps you make informed and thoughtful decisions. It also spares your family the stress of making these decisions under the pressure of time and strong emotions. Allen Mortuaries' secure pre-need trust plan can save you nearly 40% versus other plans. Keep it simple, safe, and secure. Go with the proven choice, Allen Mortuaries. Voted best funeral home in Cache Valley in northern Utah. Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
Pristine wilderness can still be found in the West, where creeks run freely and historic apple trees still bear fruit. Maple Creek Ranch features breathtaking canyon views and opportunities for real estate development. 2.5-acre lots are now available with adjacent wilderness areas that provide endless riding and recreational possibilities. So find your piece of paradise just 35 minutes from Logan at Maple Creek Ranch. Schedule your appointment online at maplecreekranch.net.
This Valentine's Day, give a piece of jewelry from S.E. Needham Jewelers. Save time and money by taking advantage of our Valentine's Day special. With the purchase of any jewelry valued at $149 or more, you'll receive dinner for two, chocolates and flowers. You can have Valentine's Day covered in one stop. Choose from a large selection of diamonds, pearls, gold, and silver jewelry. Also, your jewelry will come in our signature gift box. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. With inflation through the roof, the Fed must now decide how fast to raise interest rates to cool things off. We'll examine the debate. Also, a new report finds Americans were still on the move last year, the first full year of pandemic restrictions. What were the popular destinations? And finally, vacation travelers get the upper hand. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. Monday morning from 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news, weather, and sports.
KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Cache Valley lawmakers meeting last night in a legislative town hall. These happened virtually via the Cache County Republican Party YouTube channel. On YouTube, simply search for Cache County GOP, and you can find all of them. We're into week 4 of the session. They've done 3 of them so far, so missing only that very first week, which was a truncated 4-day week anyway. They got underway, and they'd be very informative. And we heard before the news there an update from Senator Chris Wilson on the spending on the budget, the big appropriations process that's still underway. Nearly $2 billion, Wilson said, in infrastructure and other water development, other things like that will be a part of this, recommended by his portion of the committee to the full committee, and expect more of an update on that coming later next week as this budget process plays out. But that's a lot of money going to building things and repairing things and maintaining things that many cities have said have kind of fallen behind over the last few years. So a lot of that is going to be federal money from the infrastructure bill passed to the federal level. The state still has a lot of ARPA, the Rescue Act funds from spring of last year. And then they have a pretty decent chunk of excess revenue collected from you directly by the state that they'll be spending as well. So they said they're looking long-term and they want to spend smartly. So that can mean a lot of things. Senator Wilson said he'll have some very clear detail on this to provide next week, but about $2 billion what they're looking at spending. And that's just that part of the budget. So it's going to be a big budget, to say the least. Along the lines of spending, education's been a big part of the legislative session this year for a couple of different reasons. But the one that's gotten the most attention are these bills that seem to actually be going after teachers. Their sponsors are calling them transparency bills, but they're not. They're political bills. And they're based on the idea that, teachers are secretly teaching curriculum to your kids, socialists, things like that. It's a conspiracy theory. It's popped up before. Remember Agenda 21, the supposed UN takeover of schools. It bubbled up a little bit during the Common Core stuff, that Common Core math was somehow a secret plot by Bill Gates to keep Obama in office after his second term. And, these types of things are not new. But what's different is they're getting traction more so in the legislature this year than in previous times. So that's mainly where everybody's eyeballs have been focused when it comes to education. Not a lot of talk about the education funding side of the same appropriations process that Senator Wilson gave an update on before the news. Well, luckily, Cache Valley also has a guy on the inside when it comes to the education appropriations process. And a question about that came up during last night's Cache County Republican Party town hall for Representative Dan Johnson, who is that guy. He's intimately involved with the education funding bills and the appropriations process in the House. Senator Wilson with the overall appropriations process in the Senate. Two great sources of information from right here in Cache Valley, intimately involved with these discussions. The question specifically was about recent increases in education funding, which have been more significant than at least the last 10 years, in the last few years. They've funded growth, which they have to do. They pat themselves on the back for that, but they have to. And then they've added a 4% here or 7% here. So there has been additional funding, which has brought Utah up from worst in the nation for funding per student and per classroom to second worst. We're now beating Idaho. So Representative Dan Johnson spoke to this. The question was, with these increases in funding, are we seeing returns? Are we seeing improvements? Or is it going to take more money? And if it is going to take more money, where should that money go? And Representative Johnson said, I'll take that question.
Executive, I think that we see signs of things. People have got to make sure they're looking at two things when they're looking at what happens with students in data. One is you look at that total group score, and that's one thing. And we've seen increases steadily. Matter of fact, Utah in reading in third grade, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of kids not reading at third grade level, but the rate of increase in Utah is higher than it was across the nation. That also was true in the recent national exams in mathematics and science. So that's a good thing. Also, when you look at ACT scores and college readiness exams, Utah kids do really, really well. It hasn't gone down. Another good indication is graduation rates. They've gone up. And the graduation rates have gone up in the state of Utah in places where they're having higher incidence of poverty, socioeconomic issues. But here's the two things that really matter. One is the group score, and you get that and that's kind of an achievement test part of it. But the most important part of it that people don't really get into and don't look at is growth. I was on a blue ribbon panel to design assessments for the state of Utah back when Governor Huntsman was our governor. And at that time I said, the thing that we've got to do is be able to find a way to measure growth. So right now on scores in schools, they know who all the socioeconomic groups are, and they disaggregate all of that data. And we're able, because of the assessments that we use now, we're able to measure growth. So in a school, say they got a B or an A grade, which is what they were giving, in your growth score or in your score for your school, if you were a school that was a low socioeconomic school and you showed growth in an area, you got kind of like double points for that because you were demonstrating that growth. And so that I mentioned this before about having an individual student identifier. You can follow a kid from grade to grade to grade and subject from subject to subject. And so that's narrowing it down to an individual kid. And you can also get, especially in the early assessment that kids take, you can get a really good look at their individual skill sets within their movement.
That was, again, an update provided last night during the legislative town hall that took place on the Cash GOP YouTube channel. Representative Dan Johnson not only answering the question that one of the quote-unquote virtual attendees of the town hall had submitted about education funding. Is it helping? And the answer to that was yes. Increases in funding have shown higher graduation rates and more. But then a larger explanation from Representative Johnson of how they get this information, how they're tracking this, improvements versus things staying the same or even getting worse. Really interesting stuff. Representative Johnson also threw out a few websites where you can go look at this yourself. The easiest place to go, honestly, is just the Utah State Board of Education website. Simply search for USBE or Utah State Board of Education. It's right there on the front page under metrics and school data, and it shows you what he's talking about here. So I'm watching something. I'm a little distracted, to be honest with you. I'm watching something as we speak play out in a legislative committee that's kind of interesting. Digital driver's licenses came up last week. There were some protesters at the committee meeting, got a lot of attention. They were there saying digital driver's licenses are a UN plot of some kind. I don't know the details on that theory. Representative Mike Peterson and Representative Phil Lyman host a podcast that got some attention when their guest made the same claim, and we're hoping to get him on the show to explain what that was all about. But it's probably moving forward. Then today, on top of digital driver's licenses, literally right now, in a legislative committee meeting, they're debating Republican lawmaker Jordan Tusher's bill that would create a process to digitally sign ballot initiatives. Tusher says his bill seeks to create, for the price tag of about $300,000, they could create a system that would create a sort of digital ID that would be tied to your signature that's on file with the Lieutenant Governor's Elections Office. And so you could sign a ballot initiative or a referendum or something like that when citizens decide to make their own law through those processes or undo something lawmakers did through the referendum process. You could do that online. Other states are experimenting with this already. This would bring Utah up to that level, and we'll see. But the debate's been interesting. I thought it would just get opposition because lawmakers hate ballot initiatives anyway. Why would they make it easier for voters to voice their opinion? Don't you know who they are? They're lawmakers. But instead, the committee is mainly questions. Lawmakers seem sincerely curious to find out how this would work. It's playing out right now if you want to listen. le.utah.gov, this debate happening on digital signatures for ballot initiatives, referendums, and more. And we'll see where this one goes. All right. Coming up, Senator Chris Wilson also provided an update last night on what he says is about $2 billion in infrastructure investments here in Utah. His portion of the Legislative Appropriations Committee has been working on. Where's it all going to go? We'll talk about it and hear this update from Senator Chris Wilson right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
With so much financial uncertainty, are you wondering if your retirement savings will last? The market's ups and downs can keep you guessing, especially if you're approaching retirement or considering it. If you have more questions than answers about what's next, your Edward Jones financial advisor can help you prepare for your journey. After all, retirement isn't the end of the trek, it's a new beginning. Visit edwardjones.com or stop by your local Edward Jones office. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
The guys from UNI Furniture are excited. They went to Vegas and came back winners. Wait a minute, it's not what you're thinking. Those guys from UNI went to the furniture market in Vegas and they picked up 2 new lines of furniture. New lines of dining room, bedroom, living room, TV consoles, and home entertainment pieces. UNI also took in a semi-truckload of Southern Motion recliners, sectionals, and chairs they weren't expecting. Stocked up with lots of inventory and lots of great deals. That's why they say you'll always find a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
We're talking with Jeff at Daryl's Appliance. Why does Northern Utah choose Daryl's when they need to repair their appliances?
Our customers trust us to get the job done right. We have been repairing appliances for over 52 years. We also have our Under One Roof loyalty program where we discount the trip charge when you decide to buy new instead of the repair. Plus, our service calls and parts are guaranteed. Daryl's West on Airport Road, open till 6 p.m. on weekdays and 5 on Saturdays.
When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal counsel. Get the Bear. Berenson and Caldwell.
My dad was in a car accident. He was rear-ended by a work truck. He sustained some pretty bad injuries. What we didn't know at the time was that he also had sustained a traumatic brain injury, and it really affected his personality. You know, if he just had an MRI, if he'd had someone pushing him to get checked out, make him feel confident that he wasn't going to end up going bankrupt with medical debt.
Visit BerensonLaw.com to instantly connect and receive a free case review of your injury. BerensonLaw.com.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Highlights right now from today's monthly news conference with Governor Spencer Cox. This was in combination with an update from the coronavirus task force, which the governor presented himself. Dr. Angela Dunn not on hand. You heard the opening presentation from the governor there, or at least highlights from it, before the break. If you'd like to watch the whole thing, again, you can do so via the video at governor.utah.gov, where it's linked right at the top of the page there. The remainder of the news conference was a Q&A where members of the public, the media, all got to submit questions to the governor on various topics, and most of those questions pertained to the currently underway legislative session. So, combining this now with our planned Tuesday and Thursday check-in with the legislature and what's been going on Capitol Hill, we'll have more of this later on in the hour, some interesting announcements as far as what the revenue numbers look like and whether lawmakers plan to continue on with an idea of providing some kind of tax cut for Utahns. It's been a tradition every legislative session for years now to find something at least to benefit veterans or those on Social Security. That's what was proposed early in the session. Whether or not that could happen depended on revenue numbers, and we got some news on that front today. So we'll be getting to that later on in the hour. Governor Cox taking questions during the monthly news conference today. And again, many of these questions from the media and the public pertaining to specific legislation, the first of which is regarding legislation that would actually limit the power of the governor during a public health crisis. The legislature not happy last year to find out that they had limited power. The legislature doesn't like to share power, and they like to see the governor or treat the governor as sort of a figurehead. There are co-equal branches in Utah, much to their chagrin, but there are ways the legislature can limit the other branches constitutionally, and that's exactly what this bill would do. Governor Cox was asked how he felt about that. As someone who was a lieutenant governor during the last administration, served on this task force, and was a part of key decisions, including some of the governor's executive orders and public health orders through the Utah Department of Health, he was there right on the front lines and was key decision maker in many of these decisions. So the question posed to him today was simply this: how do you feel, having seen how the process worked last year, what went well and what didn't, how do you feel about the legislature through this bill saying we're going to be right in the middle of this next time it happens, and we might say no, we're not going to do that?
And so we will work together. I do think that the emergency order, the power that exists now, never contemplated emergencies that lasted for a year. That was not contemplated. It's not something we really thought of. Emergencies are something that happen in a week or a month or two. Right? If we have wildfires, we have floods, we have earthquakes. Those are the things we normally thought of. And so I agree, and I've said from the beginning that we should examine this and make it better for both the executive branch and the legislative branch to function over the course of something that lasts this long.
The governor is saying basically, as you heard there, he's not opposed to this limitation on the governor's power, that this was something not considered in the original iteration of these powers laid out in statute and the Constitution the fact that a public health crisis could go on for a year. The main sticking point is really how often should the governor have to renew an executive order or an emergency declaration, rather. Should the legislature get to okay that or sign in on that? I like the idea, honestly. This is part of the checks and balances of equal branches of government, right? What makes me nervous, though, is we did see the legislature act foolishly a few times, or try to act foolishly a few times in 2020, and only to have the Utah Department of Health and the governor's office say no. And so co-equal needs to be a really big part of this. And the governor said today that's what they'll be looking for. They want to make sure that the legislature doesn't assume too much power because they are not the experts in a public health crisis. And that's something that the legislature, though the governor didn't say this, might have a hard time admitting at times, as we saw a couple of times in 2020. So they're looking for balance, the governor said. And other than that, they're happy with the process so far. A question posed to the governor during the Q&A today involved legislation that's currently making its way through the legislature. It has passed the House and House committees before that, passed a Senate committee, and will get a Senate floor debate probably next week. It is a bill sponsored by a representative in the House that would ban transgender girls from sports, from women's sports, from girls' sports at certain age groups here in Utah. The impetus for this, the justification given during the committee hearings and House floor debate, is that there's concern that a transgender girl might come in and change the nature of women's sports. Those who are opposed to the bill say that it is discriminatory, likely unconstitutional, which legislative attorneys actually agree with that. They said so during the committee hearings for this bill, that it likely would not withstand a court challenge. But the opponents of the bill say that isn't the only reason not to do this, that it's discriminatory, harmful to transgender, young transgender people, and that there is plenty of evidence that even college-level sports organizations have been able to handle this type of thing without anything like a statewide ban on allowing them in the first place. That bill will receive a Senate vote, as I said, early next week, and I have no I have no idea whether it will pass the Senate or not. It passed the House, but not by a huge majority. So we'll see. The question posed to the governor today was, if this bill does pass the Senate, will you sign it? And his answer was very nuanced.
Thank you, Taylor. I will tell you that this is one of the most complicated and difficult bills that we have this session. And it's complicated and difficult for a couple reasons. One, the main reason that it's complicated and difficult is that both sides of this issue are actually right. And there's a lot of there's a lot of passion, a lot of fiery rhetoric, a lot of name calling on both sides of this issue that I think is very unfortunate. So, look, there are biological advantages with your birth gender. Those are biological facts, and nobody disputes that at all. It is also a fact that women's sports has had a disadvantage for many, many years. We've gotten better, but we still have a ways to go. And so I want to say this. The bill's sponsor is coming from a genuine place of concern. And I don't think demonizing her or her intention is helpful at all. Because again, these are real, valid, serious concerns. And by the way, this is not a Utah issue. This is an issue that every state and every country is working through right now. I mean, at this moment, there is a group of women who have gotten together who are experts, and they're working. Martina Navratilova, others, Olympic medalists, PhDs. Just over the past week, they've announced, or 2 weeks, that they're working on trying to figure out this issue because it is a threat to women's sports. But also, and this is where I think we have to be just so very careful, is that if you have not spent time with transgender youth, then I would encourage you to pause on this issue. We have so many people that are in a very, very difficult spot right now. And we have very few, if any, transgender girls that are participating in sports. We've gotten really good at the LGBTQ side of things. We're struggling on the T side of things. And we will work hard on this. I'm still working with the sponsor. We have a meeting today to see if we can figure out a Utah way to solve this issue. And we'll have more to come on that.
The governor said when pressed by the media, the original question, will you support the bill? Governor Cox said not in its current form. He was, quote, uncomfortable with the bill in its current form. But he said he feels there is room to work with the bill and the bill's sponsor to work out something that could pass the Senate and get signed by the governor before the end of this session. So there were several more questions, all pertaining to vaccines and the way we're handling things as far as procurement, etc. If you'd like to watch the whole thing, you can do so again at governor.utah.gov, about an hour-long monthly news conference from Governor Spencer Cox today. Some highlights of it there here on the show. On the other side, some news that lawmakers announced today when it comes to the budget, a potential tax cut for at least some Utahns, veterans, and those on Social Security, and whether or not they're going to be able to reach an agreement on education funding. All of that was discussed in the Senate media availability today. We've got highlights of that for you coming up right after this look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. The news this hour is brought to you by Wheatland Seed. Well, yesterday, Utah officially began automatic expungement and becomes the second state in the country to implement a clean slate law. Back in 2019, Utah lawmakers unanimously passed Utah's clean slate law, which automatically clears old and minor criminal records of individuals who have remained crime-free for a set period of time. Governor Spencer Cox said that he believes in the rule of law and that people should be held accountable when a law is broken, but he also believes in second chances. He said that Utah's clean slate law is a common sense policy that will help people find housing, get jobs, and contribute back to their communities after paying their debt to society. Utah court spokesperson Tanya Mashburn explained that having a criminal record is more common than many people realize. She noted that more than 1 in 4 Utahns have some type of record, and those records can create barriers to housing and jobs. Nearly 500,000 Utahns have been identified for automatic clearance so far. Now, in order to be able to qualify, there are several stipulations. Individuals must remain conviction-free for 5 to 7 years. Covered offenses include misdemeanor A, drug possession, most misdemeanor B and C level offenses, and all infractions. The new law would not clear any felony records, domestic violence-related offenses, sex offenses, simple assaults, or DUI offenses, and there are also numerical limits, which means that some individuals will have too many total records to qualify for any automatic clearance. And Congressman Blake Moore was in the Cache Valley yesterday and was a guest on KVNU's For the People show, explaining to Jason Williams that he's trying to be available to the people when he's back in Utah.
I think it's fundamental to my role
Sure.
in this, and is to be there and to show as much as I can. I have a young family, and we make that work. Still make it to when I'm not in DC. You can't really control the schedule.
Sure.
But when you're back in district, we'll make sure. We'll get the Little League games on a Wednesday. We make sure to schedule the town hall on a Thursday night, like that type of stuff, and we're managing that.
He said you can also get a full schedule of all of his town halls at his website. Well, the weather forecast calling for hazy skies to continue through the weekend as we hit the low 40s today. Tonight we'll drop into the mid-teens overnight, and then we'll be back into the high 30s, low 40s for tomorrow and into Sunday. Looks like Valentine's Day Monday, mid-40s. A really nice kickoff to the first of next week before we'll see a chance of some snow possible for Tuesday and Wednesday. You can get more on these and other stories at CashValleyDaily.com. I'm Will Feelwright for KVNU News.
This is Tron Arnold of Edward Jones bringing you the Daily Financial Market Report for February 11th, 2022. U.S. markets come under pressure today, giving mounting concerns about an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken noted earlier that we're in a window when an invasion can begin at any time, and the administration is encouraging U.S. citizens to evacuate Ukraine in the next 24 to 48 hours. The S&P fell over 1.5%, and the Nasdaq was down over 2%. Notably, oil prices have moved sharply higher after the escalation in geopolitical tensions, with the WTI crude oil up over 4% to $93 a barrel. Russia is one of the world's largest oil producers, particularly so for the European region. Also of note, yields have moved lower. The U.S. 10-year Treasury yield is back under 2% to 1.95% levels as Treasuries act as flight to safety asset class. While markets historically have been able to look through geopolitical tensions, the uncertainty caused by this Russia-Ukraine escalation will likely keep market volatility elevated in the near term in our view. We would expect tensions to ease over time, but in the meantime, we may see continued pressure on energy and oil prices, as well as a flight to safe haven assets, including U.S. dollar and Treasuries. In stocks of local interest, Thermo Fisher was down 2.41%, closing at $566.29. Home Depot was down $4.80, closing at $350.29. Autoliv was down to $248 at $98.69. Lowe's was down $1.49 at $225.91. Walmart was down 75 cents at $135.33. Nucor was down $3.18 at $118.41. Coca-Cola was down $1.09 at $60.29. Kroger's was up $1.10, closing at $46.27. General Electric was down $1.96 at $96.83, and R. Donnelley was down a penny at $10.75 a share. This is Tron Arnold of Edward Jones, member SIPC, serving individual investors with personalized attention and long-term financial advice at 1202 South Highway 89 in Logan. If you want more information, feel free to give us a call at 435-752-3400.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work, or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
This Valentine's Day, give a piece of jewelry from S.E. Needham Jewelers. Save time and money by taking advantage of our Valentine's Day special. With the purchase of any jewelry valued at $149 or more, you'll receive dinner for two, chocolates and flowers. You can have Valentine's Day covered in one stop. Choose from a large selection of diamonds, pearls, gold, and silver jewelry. Also, your jewelry will come in our signature gift box. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
West Liberty Foods in Tremonton is excited to announce that they've increased their starting wages to $17 per hour for general production and to $19 per hour for machine operators and forklift operators. A shift premium is added on for the second shift of $1.50 per hour. West Liberty Foods offers paid vacations, attendance rewards, 401k, medical, dental, and vision insurance. Looking for part-time work? Pick the days you'd like to work. Call West Liberty Foods at 435-207-7000 to speak with a recruiter today.
Monday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. The Super Bowl happened. Did Buck manage to win all of his bets? We'll find out. Plus, it's Valentine's Day, Buck. That could be a busy day for a lot of people out there.
Could be busy. We've also got a lot of things happening in the world. We'll bring you up to speed on the latest end of COVID mandates in various states, the Canadian trucker convoy, what's going on in Ukraine. That's coming up on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
for the people. Technical difficulties here in the studio. With Bill Walter out, I'm pushing my own buttons, and I had not turned my own microphone on. Usually it's Bill that does that to me. A few more items to get to from last night's legislative town hall. And again, you can watch the entire town hall courtesy of the Cache Republican Party on the Cache County GOP YouTube channel. On YouTube, simply search for Cache County GOP. You can watch the entire just under an hour-long event. We're just bringing you some highlights here. But there was one other item that I wanted to make sure was included in the show today, because it's been a multi-year push from two different governors now. It was a huge part of the federal infrastructure bill debate, and it's something that state leaders and state economists and county leaders and city leaders have said again and again and again needs to happen if we're going to see economic improvements and more jobs coming to those rural areas, especially those that are struggling now with the loss of certain fossil fuel-related jobs as that market continues to implode. So it's a big deal, is what I'm getting at, and yet there hasn't been a lot of action on this or even funding from the legislature on something as simple as expanding broadband. It's weird how things have changed, right? We went from a time maybe 20 years ago when broadband was a luxury. It was something that, you didn't need, but it was fun. And then soon after that, it was, okay, it's something that a lot of people need, but not everybody. And then it went to, well, okay, it's kind of hard to do this and that if you don't have it. Then there was the smartphone revolution. Then everyone was like, nobody will have broadband in their homes. And then that didn't prove true. And here we are today, in which it's nearly impossible to get anything done as a business, as an individual, as a parent, as a student, without, quality internet access in your home. And there are a lot of areas in Utah in which that's still not a great option for them, to a quality internet access. It's either extremely expensive or not even available. One of the problems, I've harped on this on the show for years, but one of the problems we have here in Utah is that we've always, the broadband map here in Utah, we've allowed that to be drawn and the information that goes into it supplied by the internet service providers themselves. And, they have a lot of incentive to say, yeah, we're providing great coverage all over this geographic area, when that might not actually be true. And so there are several of us nerds who have a bit of cachet with the legislature who have said again and again. Representative Stephen Handy has been very receptive to this, and myself and Jesse Harris at Utopia have had conversations with him about this, and he's wanted to change this for a long time. But again, the state really just has no idea where there's great broadband or substandard broadband, or they've even at times found that the map says there's broadband available, only to find out that there isn't at all. So that needs to change. And if you're going to map this out, it should happen before you start spending on broadband expansion. Well, the legislature has decided, what a great idea. And so they're running with it. And so we'll jump back now again to a moment from last night's legislative town hall in which Senator Chris Wilson spoke about this specifically. I didn't know this myself, but he is actually sitting on a task force working on exactly this. How can we best use a lot of this federal infrastructure money to get broadband or better broadband out to rural areas so that they can take advantage of things like the governor's initiative to get 30% of the state workforce working from home. Someone in Rich County, if they had broadband access, could work for a state agency, high-paying job, but do so from the comfort of their home in Rich County if they had broadband. That's just one example, too. And also, this does open up the doors for where businesses can locate. Instead of being crunched along the Wasatch Front and in Salt Lake County and here in Cache Valley, businesses would have the option to actually locate themselves in somewhere like Rich County or the outskirts of Brigham City and Box Elder County if the broadband was there. So, Senator Wilson had this to say.
A working group that I'll be running legislation to form a broadband commission. And then that commission will have about 9 different people involved for oversight of, the amount of money spent, or actually these funds. We're going to have anywhere between 100 million and maybe even up to 700-800 million of federal funds that we will be applying for the state of Utah. And so it's going to be, quite a coordinated effort, and we'll be having legislation. We're getting a bill file. Should be ready to go the next couple of days. We'll be forming this commission, a broadband commission, and it's kind of a moving target right now on what it will be doing and an oversight. And it will be quite an interesting, like I said, process. And we're putting together a plan right now to present to the federal government. We've got some funds that'll be coming available in May to put together a very comprehensive plan on what areas of the state we can most help with getting broadband and fiber into these. Some of them are obviously rural areas, and some of them will be based on income. Will be part of what the federal funds. But we're ahead of a lot of other states. We do have a broadband center right now, and so hopefully that'll help us acquire and get as much federal funding available to help out in a number of different areas. And right now we're trying to decide what ARPA funds can be used for broadband and for fiber, and hopefully we can. There's no question. There's a lot of areas of Cache County. Talking to many mayors, we don't have fiber in a number of towns that I've talked with. So hopefully it will be very, very helpful and beneficial to obviously the Logan Canyon project and some other towns. And so really excited to be a part of that and have that opportunity. And it'll be going on. It'll be going on for years.
And one final item of interest from last night's legislative town hall. A question about gambling in Utah, the potential to legalize it. It's interesting where this is coming from, but there is a bill. This is, I think, the third year this has come up. It's sponsored by a conservative Republican lawmaker out of Utah County, and it's a bill that would legalize horse track betting in Utah. Just that, not casinos or the Powerball lottery or anything like that, but it would legalize horse track betting in Utah. And every year it comes up, it dies quickly. It's back again this year, and there was a question about that for Cache Valley lawmakers. Is there a push to legalize certain types of gambling here in Utah? Representative Casey Snyder said he'd field this question last night.
I mean, I can start there. I don't see that as something that we're going to address right off the bat. I think, personally, I'm not supportive of it. There's a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously, there's just that general notion. It's in a lot of states, it ends up being a tax on poverty, and those that make a lot less money tend to dream big, even though the odds are not in their favor. The second thing I sort of have concerns about is once you open up base gambling, you also, by virtue of how our state is set up and how it interacts with some of our sovereign nations, you also open yourself up for casinos and that sort of thing. And I'm just not comfortable with that position. And it wouldn't be something that I would be supportive of at this time.
There you have it. The word from Representative Casey Snyder that there's not really a big push for this, but if it does come up, not something he's super excited about making happen. So I'm not sure what's behind this. People have asked me as well, what's behind this bill? I don't know. But it comes up again and again. All right. On the other side, we'll recap the committee hearing I've been following throughout the hour here on potential digital signatures for ballot initiatives. I'm curious. I thought this would die a quick death. It's getting a really robust discussion in a House committee hearing right now. The Political Subdivisions Committee. Maybe we'll have a report for you that looks like they're about to wrap up. We'll see if this bill makes it to a House floor debate as they vote here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. More For the People right after this.
Dr. Josh Red, chiropractic physician, explains how Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
If you have low thyroid and you're taking thyroid medication, the biggest question you should ask yourself is what's causing my low thyroid specifically? If you don't know the answer to that question, it's important to call us. At Red River, we identified triggers that will cause the low thyroid to begin with. One of the most common causes of low thyroid is a disease called Hashimoto's disease. This is an autoimmune disease that is a lot more complicated than just a primary thyroid issue. This is why people will be on thyroid hormone but still feel little to no improvement because nothing's being done to address the bigger, more complicated problem, which is Hashimoto's. If you have low thyroid or you have an autoimmune disease and you're on medication and still don't feel well, call Red River.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes Priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. With inflation through the roof, the Fed must now decide how fast to raise interest rates to cool things off. We'll examine the debate. Also, a new report finds Americans were still on the move last year, the first full year of pandemic restrictions. What were the popular destinations? And finally, vacation travelers get the upper hand. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. Monday morning from 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news, weather, and sports.
I think the entire government should be privatized. Chuck E. Cheese could run the parks. Everything operated by tokens. Drop in a token, go on the swing set. Drop in another token, take a walk. Drop in a token, look at a duck.
Wrapping up hour one here. Stay tuned, though. The For the People movie show and Andy Morgan coming up in just a few minutes. Hour two of today's show. Some breaking news. I don't have a lot of details on this yet, but you may have seen these reports in the news late last year. A story about a man. He was handcuffed at the West Valley City Police Station, and an altercation broke out, and the man, a 31-year-old man, was shot and killed while handcuffed inside the police station by an officer. His family sued, and it looks like the city has settled with them in what was described in a breaking news update just minutes ago as a mutually agreeable amount. The city isn't saying how much money it had to pay in this settlement to Nice's family. And although Utah law states the amount of money government entities pay does have to be disclosed, they aren't saying what it is yet. So I'm assuming it's a lot of money. Body camera footage obtained by the Salt Lake Tribune showed the officer and a coworker. The man was inebriated on something, basically. There's audio and video of other officers saying, he says he's taken a lot of pills and all of that, and he was arrested for DUI, but arresting officers didn't tell medics that the man, Brian Holt was his name, had taken pills or was suicidal. So the question around all this was the man trying to get police to shoot him at the police station, and where he was in handcuffs, was it necessary for them to even draw their guns and kill him there at the station? So the city has settled. We'll keep you posted on that, but some breaking news there. One final note on the legislative session before we transition away from politics and public policy to the movie show. Great question from a listener. Listener says, what has happened so far on, drought legislation? It was the drought, of course, probably coming back, it looks like, this summer, unfortunately. Snowpack looked great there for a while, and as time has ticked on, we've quickly dropped down into the more 80% of normal from the 120% of normal we were looking at the start of the year. Not a good sign. Likely going to be a drought year. As Dr. Tom Meyer told us, that's what they predict at USU Climate Center, but not as bad as last year, though that could change, he said quickly, and it could be as bad as last year or even worse. So a listener wants to know what has happened so far. What have lawmakers passed? Well, only two things so far. A bill that would ban homeowners associations, government entities, any decision-making body that would normally have the ability to force something like this. They are banned from forcing people to have lawns or park strips. If someone wants to xeriscape, even in a homeowners association area, controlled area, they will be allowed to under the state law. And the second really isn't a state law, but legislative leadership has said they are fully behind a bill making its way slowly through the legislative session this year that would start a process for mandatory secondary water metering. This doesn't mean you'll be getting a bill yet, but it does mean the state would have an idea of how much secondary water is being used in what areas and by what users. The goal would to have that up and running by 2030, and so expect that bill to pass. There will be more, though. Stay tuned. We're only halfway through. The Movie Show with Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com is next here on KVNU Logan.